Welcome everyone to the webinar. We're going to wait a couple more minutes for the stragglers coming in. In the meantime, I'm going to launch a poll. And this poll is just to see where you're at, because obviously today at the webinar, we are going to cover physician utilization and how to maximize it. So I really want to see where everyone is in their progress. All right. Before we get officially started, a couple pieces of housekeeping. All right, we're going to keep this interactive. And so at the end of the webinar, we're going to open up the Q&A section. So if you look down at your Zoom, you're going to see Q&A, right? And you can also use the chat function as well. Any way you feel you want to ask a question, ask them. And that leads into the second part. All right, we're going to be distributing some content that's helpful along the way. You know, extra reading, if you will. All right, we're going to be doing that via the chat function in Zoom. All right, and the point of that is just, you know, for those who want to go deeper in a certain part of this. All right. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll in a couple seconds. And this is very helpful information. So, okay. Let me share my screen with everyone. I'm Patrick Randolph from QDoctor. I'm the CEO. QDoctor is the only fully autonomous schedule management solution for medical practices. I spent 7 years focusing on medical practice scheduling. All right. And so I wanted to go deep into something that I think is really relevant, particularly in the times we're in right now. And that's how medical practices can reach 100% schedule utilization without a large budget. Right? And each of those words were carefully chosen to reflect the reality of what we're in. And so looking at the poll results, and we're really helpful, and what we're seeing is reflective of what our customers are also seeing. Many are still about 10 to 25% below pre-COVID. Depending on where you are geographically, right, you're going to be experiencing different things. And this is reflected from the CNBC article. I know a lot of you can relate, right? During COVID, you rapidly switched from in-person, right, visits to telemedicine, right? And that helped a little bit with the patient volume. And now you're transitioning back, and we'll talk about how you're going to balance those two as well. But the goal of today is, as the webinar states quite clearly, let's get you guys to 100% utilization, right, with little or no budget. Here are the constraints you are facing, right? That is keeping you for 100% utilization right now. Number one, frankly, a lot of folks are understaffed, right? A lot of medical practices, let's see, we have chat, let's make sure I'm good. All right, so a lot of practices right now either furlough people or still have people working from home. And QDoctor is a remote company, and we hire for remoteness. Because if we don't, working from home is tough. It means people aren't at 100% productivity. Right? So you're not getting 100% productivity out of staff, or you've had furloughed staff. You still have enough people to do the work. Number two, and this is a big one, safety restrictions. Back in the day, and we'll get to this, you used to be able to stuff the schedule. But now, due to social distancing, right, there needs to be physical distance between patients and, of course, different appointment times. So balancing that is quite tough. And then finally, little to no budget, right? Everyone in the economy is taking a hit. And so trying to rebuild right now, by downloading a bunch of different pieces of software and spending a ton on marketing just isn't in the cards. If you do have a budget, right, you're being very focused with it, very specific. So how do we do it? How do we get to 100% utilization? We pride ourselves in our webinars, and if you ever read any of our guides, on being very practical, trying to provide very practical simple instructions to help you guys achieve that. And hopefully we can achieve that here. So number one, the right templating. 2 is creating the right incentives. 3, the right messaging. And 4 is the right focus. So we're going to walk through each of those. Number one, the right templating. And that's open access templating. Right? At a broad level, for those of you who don't know, open access templating means pretty much any appointment type can go in any slot. Right? But we need to be a little more specific. QDoctor has a product called Switch, and what that product does, particularly useful during COVID, is we would text patients for our customers and ask them if they would be willing to switch to a telemedicine appointment. About 35 to 40% said yes. And that showed us that there was an appetite for telemedicine, right, beyond COVID. Right? And so the way to balance social distancing with reaching 100% utilization is dividing your schedule, 75% in-person visits, and then 25% telemedicine appointments. Okay? Within those slots, and we're going to focus on telemedicine first because these are the ones you want to fill, right? You want to have strict instructions, but within those, in-person telemedicine, any appointment type that meets that criteria can go in there. You don't want to get precious right now. Right? So let's focus on the telemedicine side of this, right? The most important thing is to provide clear guidelines for your staff on which patients, which appointment types to offer telemedicine to when they're on the phone. Okay, what we would recommend is, frankly, simple instructions. If it's follow-up, recheck for patients under 75, they should be offered a telemedicine appointment first. All right? From our Switch product, what we found is there was no difference in whether people wanted a telemedicine appointment or not when they were under 75. And this was across different, economic levels. This was, rural and urban. This had a nice encompassing sample. So you want to give them strict, simple instructions, right? You want to fill up these telemedicine because that allows you to spread out the in-person visits, right? And you want to train the staff on this. Specific instructions because they've gotten a lot of instructions, right? Just like you, they're going through a ton. Right? They're going through a lot in their personal life. They're also going through a lot right now in their professional life. Everyone getting back in the swing of things. So you want to train them on this. With the in-person visits, right? We talked about the generic templating. Now, a lot of people, particularly administrators we've talked to, they really want to do open access, right? And they know that it improves utilization, improves access for patients. But there's a very specific reason that we've heard over and over again why people don't do it. And that is provider feedback or provider response. Right? Providers have very specific ways of doing things. My father's a physician, and he only wants to see certain patients at certain times. And so they have specific templating, specific rules. But right now, especially for the next 6 months, right, you want to throw those out the window. And so if you're going to do open access templating, which we highly recommend, you want to communicate this to the providers. You want to communicate that it will help them get utilization back up, right? It's going to help with patient access, but also that it's not forever, that you will revisit in 6 months, right? But right now, to help put people back to work, if they're willing to work with you on it, right, that'll make a big difference. And getting their buy-in and knowing that it's not permanent will go really, really far. Right? So that's the biggest obstacle. They say never waste a crisis. This is, a small way of doing it. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually send to you guys a helpful add-on guide. It's our definitive guide to appointment types. I just put it in chat. All right, you can open it now. We'll send it in the resources as well. For those of you who did open it right now, let me know when you're back at Zoom. I'll wait a couple seconds. But what that guide does is it will go through very specifically how to organize those templates and appointment types, even more detail than we just did. It's probably our most read or second most read guides. All right, now we're back. So we talked about the right templating, right? And again, getting the provider buy-in there is just the most important part. The second part that I've heard from a lot of folks is we're not sure if patients are ready to come back. The good thing here is that you can affect change, right? Remember, you've been doing cleanliness, you have been doing, hygienics for hundreds of years. This is a core competency of every medical practice, keeping things clean, right? And for some businesses, they're just trying to get caught up with all this, right? How do we clean things? How do we make sure things don't spread germs? But you've been doing this for your entire existence. So it's important to remind patients that you guys know what you're doing, right? This is your core competency. You've been doing it for a long time in the medical industry as well, has been doing it for hundreds of years. Put simply, you've been doing hygienics since before it was cool. And so reassuring patients, playing in the psychology is really important, right? Now, how do you get the message out though? And again, I'm talking about little to no budget here. For those of you with the marketing team, or press team, you probably already have this up. But if you don't, right, here's what you should do. Number one is use the free channels, email, social media, and your website. All right. And what you want is frequent updates. Frequent updates of pictures of the office is open, articles about your practice's history, about hygienics in the medical field, all these things, right? You want frequent updates there. Now you're thinking a couple things. One, how often should I post? And I don't have the time. So we're going to be sending out a guide after. I didn't want to send it out right now because it's a bit of a longer read that provides step-by-step instructions, right, about how often you should be posting on different platforms, right, and also how to schedule your posts. And this is how you get around the I don't have time, right? You might not have 20 minutes every day to do all this stuff, but you might have 2 hours one day. So during that time, what you're going to do is you're going to write out, your whole month's posts. All right, and that'll save you a lot of time. You schedule them throughout. And you can reuse posts too. They don't have to be new every time. By having frequent updates, you're instilling a lot of confidence. And the other part of that messaging, besides the psychology part, is the support your local doctor. Right? You're a medical practice here. Right? I can't tell you, and I'm sure you're the same, how many times I've ordered from a restaurant in the last couple of months under the guise of, I want to support local businesses. Right? You are a local business. You mean so much to the community. Right? Get the message out there. And how to get the message out there besides email, social media, and website. It's also utilizing the local press. This can seem really intimidating. All right, a press person or whatever you need. The good thing here, though, is that we're going to help you right now. All right, what you're going to want to do is you want to find your local paper. Right, and you already know what it is. You already read it. You'll go to the website and you'll find who writes about small business, who writes about local. Right, their email is almost always on the site. Right, don't feel afraid of the cold email or whatever it might be. That's pretty much how press works. And so what we've got here is an example email to send. Right, we also broke down kind of the structure of a press email. Right, and at a high level, you have your opening line, which is establishing relevance to what they cover. Hey, you're covering local, I'm local. Journalists, just like all of us, love a little flattery as well. Second is the pitch. Right, for you, it's support your local doctor's office. Right, and you are that doctor's office. And if you know a bunch of other medical practices, you guys can actually get in this together. It's entirely up to you. And then the third part is going to be the ask. All right. And the ask is usually, going to be, hey, I would love to, be featured, have our practice featured in an article. And you want to also be offering something. Hey, would you want to interview one of our doctors? Right? And what that allows journalists to do is have a couple questions for the doctor, get some nice sound clips, and of course the doctor feels important, gets press, and also you're communicating, you're developing that relationship with the patients and making them feel secure, you're there, right? And during those interviews, you're talking about, the changes you've made, right? The increase in patients you're already seeing, right? And this can be quite helpful and quite effective. We've seen a lot of our customers doing that, and it's paid dividends for them. All right, now let's get a little more practical, all right? And we're gonna focus specifically on how to actually fill the appointments, right? Number one, and some of you are still in the midst, I think a lot of folks are, rebooking your COVID cancellations. By doing that, you'll roughly get a month of appointments worth, right? If you canceled, roughly 2.5 months of appointments, and you're able to move 50, 60, maybe 70% of them, to telemedicine, you're still gonna have about a month of appointments there. All right, so that's a great starting point. And if you don't have all your staff there and you're finding this is too much of a heavy workload, we'll get to a tool QDoctor, built to automatically rebook these patients. Second, right, you're gonna wanna mine your quote unquote patient database. Right, you're gonna want to reach out to patients for, for recall. You haven't had a physical in the last year. Past no-shows, cancellations. Okay, and that'll allow you to get another couple weeks of appointments as well. Right now, the goal is getting to 100% utilization because you want to put everyone back to work. Right, and you also want to be prepared for, a patient surge. Depending on where you are geographically, what we're hearing from our customers, their phones are ringing off the hooks with patients who want to get in. Because for months, they couldn't. Right? So you also want to be prepared for that. Right? You don't want to waste a single slot. Right? Again, you can't double book, you can't do these things anymore. So every slot matters, especially when there's not as many in-office slots. The other thing we talked about is having the right incentives. Right now, you're here because you care about 100% utilization. Right? Well, why does your team care? Right? Think about that. Well, obviously we all have pride in a job well done, but to get them to care as much as you do, you want to create the right incentives. So what I want to show you guys is kind of a structure to do that. First, you're going to set your goal and your timeline. In 4 weeks, we want to hit 100% utilization, right? You communicate that to the entire practice, the entire group, all right? You want to make sure everyone knows that's the goal, and you want to keep a dashboard. Give them a weekly report of how close they are to achieving those goals, right? Then you want to create individual incentives, right? You can do that as, something as simple as a leaderboard, right? Of who has, rescheduled the most patients, who has filled the most cancellations. You can actually add a monetary element to it and say you get $1 for every recall you reschedule. And if you think about that, how much is a recall reschedule worth to your practice? Right? And that creates a nice incentive structure. But you also want an organizational-wide incentive. So one of our customers, Providence St. Joe's in California, did something awesome, right? The incentives can be, monetary, sure, a party. They also could be fun. So what Providence St. Joe's did is their medical director said that if we reach our volume goals, I'll shave my head. Think about, your providers. How will they look with a shaved head? This might be the time to convince them. And there's fun incentives like that allow you to, do this, but also make it a fun activity, a team bonding. Because don't forget, your practice has gone through a lot right now. Right? You may have furlough. There might be people who are upset about that. Right? So this can be a fun bonding, but also help you reach that 100% utilization. So the other part, though, is that we talked about in the beginning, is that you might not have all your staff, and still might not be able to operate 100%, but even if they are, it might not be enough. So I'm gonna put a poll out there, our second poll here, all right? And this could be about automation, all right? Because we wanna figure out, these are kind of your schedulers here, right? They work hard, they're scrappy, and they're doing their best, but there's only so many calls a day someone can make, right? Particularly, even if you don't even account for burnout, there's just only so many, times you can press a button, all right? But by adding automation, what you're doing, oh, sorry guys. What you're doing is you're hulking out your schedulers, right? So I know one of the biggest fears is automation is going to put people out of work, right? We all read the reports of 1 million jobs will be, taken out of work by automation. But in healthcare, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think this is the way to really boost productivity, especially as a medical practice. You don't have all the resources, especially when you're competing against large health systems. So you need every advantage you can get, right? So with automation, again, you're hulking them out. You're boosting their productivity dramatically. And that makes sure that you utilize every slot. You don't miss a single patient. And as you're growing, as you're regrowing, as you're getting to 100% utilization, that becomes vital. And I want to zero in on something that we've talked about already a couple times, right? And that is very much double booking, right? That's been a solution for a lot of folks, right? And unfortunately, now you can't do that. You'll have too many people in the waiting room, right? And so what do you do now, right? You can't afford a no-show. You never could, but double booking allowed you to deal with that. So here's what you're gonna do. Number one, your appointment reminders, all right? Allow them to allow patients to cancel directly via appointment reminders. All right, now we have an appointment reminder product, and something we've heard from a lot of providers is, I don't want them to be able to cancel because then I'll have a higher cancellation rate. And that's true, you will have a higher cancellation rate, but you will have a lower no-show rate, right? And right now you need to buy time, right? The earlier you find out someone is going to cancel, in fact, you want to encourage people to cancel, more likely you are to fill it, right? With the no-show, there's nothing you can do now. So you want to encourage them to cancel. Time is your friend. You want to have a process for filling those cancellations. Some people rely on kind of the manual waitlist process. You want to automate that process. Again, you don't have all the staff in the world. We want to hulk out your schedulers. So if you automate the process, we've done analysis between kind of your manual waitlist product and an automated product, QDoctor. For the same group, they saw 40 times more filled appointments. So that's what we're talking about with hulking out. And I mentioned this a couple times throughout, all right? But we do have solutions designed for each and every one of those things, right? And you can sign up for a demo, one-on-one demo on our website, qdoctor.com, and we'll walk you through these. But everything here that you see is designed around schedule utilization 100%, improve that patient access, but most of all, save staff time. Because your staff have a million things to do. So I want to end on an up note, right? Because we're seeing a lot of groups recover, and what they're thinking right now is, all right, is there any way I can benefit from this? Not just recover, but come out even stronger. I want to talk a little bit about the dot-com bubble burst. And the relevance here is that economically, what happened then is actually very similar to what's happening to practices now, right? There's an existential threat. Businesses were down dramatically. They had to rethink the way they were doing things, much the way you had to do it with telemedicine. So looking at the past for lessons, what made a business successful? right? So look at Amazon, for example. What they focused on, a lot of other successful businesses focused on was, all right, everyone's got a website now, cool, everyone can deliver packages, cool. What we're going to do then is we're going to be the best at it. Specifically, we're going to remove every single barrier between our patients and our providers. For them, it was their consumers and their products, right? So for Amazon, 7-day delivery, forget it, right? They did 1 day. So for you, no 7-day waits, right? You have automated the process to get patients in early. You want 1-day waits, right? You know, they had a robotic inventory, right? To work alongside the people in their warehouses. You do the same thing with automation, right? They didn't want you to have to click a bunch of buttons. So they patented one-click purchasing, right? You don't want patients to have to sign up for a portal and do a bunch of things, right? So you're going to meet them where they are, text messages. So that's the key here. So removing every barrier so you get patients in and you grow that volume. A webinar that we're doing next week, and I'm just going to send out the via chat right now, with Hudson Headwater, and they're really the ones leading this. They're customer Q doctors, and what they're talking about is their physician utilization and how they were able to get it back, right? And these folks are brilliant, right? And so they'll give really specific instructions, what worked and what didn't work for them. So I highly recommend signing up. There'll be some overlap, but not much. Right, so I put that in the chat and recommend that, and we'll put that in the follow-up email as well. So I want to thank everyone for coming in, and I really want to open this up to questions. Okay, you know, for those of you who weren't able to see the polling results, right? Again, I want to revisit those, and then we're gonna, you know, I'm gonna look at the questions. Number one, again, if you're feeling a bit down, your volume is about 10-20% below what it was pre-COVID. That's what the average is right now, right? So these steps will get you to 100, right? And a lot of folks do fear automation, okay? And that's normal with any technological change. It truly is. But you want to view it as more of a way of boosting staff productivity. So that's what it is. You're not going to be laying off people just because you got a new tool. And of course, you know, sign up for a one-on-one demo here. You can go to qdoctor.com to do that. So I want to thank everyone, and I want to open up to questions. All right. We'll give people a couple seconds to type up. So that's a good one. All right. So one question that I'm seeing here is specifically with regards to QDoctor, we appreciate that, about implementation and which EMRs we work with. So you can see on our site which EMRs we work with, but pretty much all the big ones: Athena, Epic, Allscripts, Cerner, Modernizing Medicine, GE Centricity Business, and I might be forgetting one or two, Greenway. All right, and implementation for those is usually anywhere from a day, right, for your Athena, Allscripts, Greenway, to about 4 to 6 weeks for Epic, to about 8 to 10 weeks for Cerner. All right. These are good questions. Okay. Here's another question. It's a little more specific about social distancing. So the question is, you know, patients coming back in the office, what we've seen. So what we've seen, and it very much depends geographically, is that patients are absolutely willing to come back in the office, but our customers are seeing more and more that patients are willing to do telemedicine. So that's really helping them out. So what they're doing for templating is that sometimes, you know, if you have 5 doctors in one office, they'll do, roughly speaking, half the day for 3 doctors are in person, while the other ones are doing telemedicine, and then they flip it. Gives time to clean the office, make sure there is no buildup in the waiting rooms. The other thing they're doing that's really helpful is they're telling patients, you know, wait in your car, we'll text you when to come in, and they're having someone with the digital check-in, you know, your iPad or whatever it is, outside the waiting room. So they're really, you're able to get that volume almost to what it was, and you don't have everyone sitting in the waiting room. where do we see telemedicine? All right, so this is the last question, unless anyone has one. And we kind of alluded this a lot. What we've heard from customers, and I'm sure you feel the same, is if the government keeps reimbursing telemedicine, then it's here to stay. That's the big unknown factor. All right, where we put based on our Switch product, with where this is with the Switch product is about 25% is where we'd expect the volume to lay, right? I don't think it'll be as high as it was with COVID in that 35 to 40% range. So I think those were a bit different scenarios than what we're going to do now. So about 25%, and that's why we recommended that. Right, another question, Melissa, thank you. How does this integrate with Phreesia? So Phreesia to us is kind of a great gateway drug. A lot of people will do Phreesia first. They'll use it for their check-in and their reminders, right? And they'll also use QDoctor for getting patients in early and rescheduling, right? And so they fit really well together because we're both integrated with the PM, right? And we're getting patients in early, right? And then Phreesia is doing the pre-appointment paperwork. They're doing your digital check-in. And there's ways to even get a little tighter there that some of our customers have used. For example, when QDoctor fills an appointment, we will have a congratulations text to the patient. In that text, sometimes people will put a link to the Phreesia portal where patients can fill out any work if they need to. So, because Phreesia is so ubiquitous, our products fit really well together. And so we're usually the second, product brought in from partner perspective after them, because they automate, the check-in, and then people get a thirst for automation. So we're the next step, and so it fits really well together. All right. Hopefully, yep. Hopefully that helped you, Melissa. And we're happy to get into more details on the Phreesia thing, but yeah, because they do such a great job integrating with the PM, and so do we, you still have your system of record. All right. Anything else, folks? And again, we'll send this out. And hopefully this is really helpful. Give us feedback, right? We'd love, individual feedback. And if you found these steps helpful, if you want us to go deeper on certain parts, please let us know. So thank you everyone for coming. All right, reach out to us, rebuild@qdoctor.com. Everyone, you're doing great, right? You're going to get to 100% plus utilization very soon. So keep up the great work, and thank you.